Hello, everybody. Welcome to Total Football Talk. It's been a while. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Eric.
And things are going to be changing a little bit. I've got some format changes that are going to be happening, but I'll get into that at the end of the show. What I want to do is start with our first AAF edition, the Alliance of American Football. Want to do three things. I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then we'll cover the four games and update you on the standings. It's going to be pretty straightforward and simple, and then I will talk about a potential change in format moving forward. Eric, you ready to do this?
Let's roll.
All right. So first, let me get into the good of the AAF. I really like the Birmingham Iron uniforms. I think some of the uniforms are actually really kind of nice. They're cool. It's kind of a throwback to some old with some modern twist to it. But that's just from an aesthetic standpoint. From a football standpoint, I really like the fact that these are guys who haven't been given a chance in the NFL because of the evaluation system being as poor as it is and getting a second chance. I like the fact that they let them play. They actually are allowed to tackle and light people up, and they don't get a 15-yard penalty for farting anywhere in the near direction of the quarterback. They actually are able to kill the quarterback if he has the football, which was nice. And it's kind of an homage. It's kind of a throwback to 80s, 90s football. So if that's the type of football that you like, then the AAF looks like it may be the league for you. A lot of things I like about it. Again, you got a little bit of something from every team. The San Diego Fleet has Nelson Spruce, so as a Ram fan, my eyes are glued to see how his performance is. Living here in Arizona, the Hot Shots are my favorite team, and they're also the most loaded team in the league, although I think they're loaded on offense, but I think Birmingham's loaded on defense. But I'll get to that later. So that's kind of the good. Eric, is there any good that you want to comment on it?
As far as football goes, could it have been a lot better? Yes. Do I think it was good? For what it is, yes, it's good. There's a reason why Mike Bercovici did not, stay on an NFL team as he is as he's on the San Diego Fleet and legitimately got blown up on one play.
Yeah.
I think the San Diego Fleet are really going to hope that Josh Johnson comes back, because Josh Johnson most likely would have been the starter with Bercovici being the backup, but all these guys are going to play no matter what. I mean, it doesn't matter right now if you're first, second, or third string. Everybody's playing.
Yeah.
It was good to see Garrett Gilbert have a really good game, and a name from the past, too. Everybody's like, is this going to allow him to get back to the NFL, because he was a big bust, and somehow Cleveland got a number one pick for him, but Trey Richardson looked all right with 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. So there's some names to keep an eye on, especially on the offensive side. But man, if you watch some defense and let the guys hit hard, which is the good of the AAF, it's that these guys are going to play and they want to get noticed, and you can't take that away. You can't take the passion away from somebody who wants to get back to the highest level in the NFL. So these guys are going to be playing their hearts out. You don't see that all the time in the NFL, but you will see that in the AAF.
Yeah, that's what I like about it too, is that it's really got guys that are hungry. So let me get into the bad. The bad for me has nothing to do with the play. The bad has to do with being duped. And to be honest with you, I'm actually rather pissed off. They built this thing as if it was its own separate entity or league. Guys, it isn't. There are only 2 coaches with no NFL experience coaching in the AAF, and one of the coaches that doesn't have any head coaching experience has made his lifetime coaching in the National Football League. This is a farm system to the NFL. This is the NFL's AAA. Make no mistake about it. This is not a separate league. This is not an independent league unto itself. It is an extension and a continuation of the National Football League. This is the Hershey Bears, okay, in hockey. All right, this is the Chicago Cubs AAA farm system, but not for any one team. It's the farm system for the entire league to go in and cherry pick as players start to perform. It's a developmental league. It's the NBA's developmental league. And that really does piss me off because they had built this thing up like it was a new league. It's not a new league. It's an extension of the NFL. So there's that element to it. I also don't like the fact... Yeah.
Basically, let me interject there. Basically, it's like NFL Europe, just played at a different time.
Yeah, and played in the United States. And I think they're testing markets. That's what I believe they're doing. This is the other bad thing about it. I don't necessarily know what the staying power of any of these organizations are because I think they're testing San Antonio in case the Raiders fail in Vegas. I think they're testing Orlando in case the Jaguars need to move out of Jacksonville. I think they're testing to see if Arizona can have another football team. I think they're testing San Diego to see if the appetite's still there for football if the NFL were to return. That's all this is. And I'm sorry to say, I think they're, like I said, they're testing Arizona to see if there could be two teams in this market. It's very, it got me off to a very untrusting start when they built it up as one thing, and then I come to find out they've got games on the NFL Network. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is just a AAA thing. That was disappointing. Eric, what was your bad?
Well, before I get into that, any chance to go into a Hot Shots game?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to probably go in March 24th when they play the Fleet. But I'm looking at maybe going to their next home game after they get back on this road trip. Seats are $20. You can get season tickets for $75.
They decide not to play football in cold weather climates anymore. So I'm just, seeing if there's a way that, you can go to a game, and the closest city to me is Birmingham.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy, right?
The bad for me right now, it's not really a bad. It's really a wait and see approach. It's attendance. The guys on CBS, T. Barber, Trent Green, they were all talking about how, T. Barber's like, oh, there's 30,000 fans here in San Antonio. And I look around, I'm like, dude, there's like 1,500 people behind you at least. So right now, it's fans and the crowd. I'm really curious to see if that's actually going to pick up in the next couple of weeks. Because if it does, it's legitimately got a platform. If not, it's only going to be TV.
Well,
and
I know
that it beat at the NBA, but listen, dodgeball right now between 3-year-olds can beat the NBA.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what it's going to be like during college basketball tournament time, because that's when the 7th and 8th week of the AAF is going to be happening. So we'll see how it fares then, against there. Back in 2000, 2001, 2002, when the XFL took over, the XFL really didn't start playing until March, April.
Yeah.
And so this football a few months off before, diving back in with the new league. And I'm curious, if they're just testing the waters right after the Super Bowl about going right back into football. A lot of people are football overloaded. So part of me, that's the bad part as well. That people are football overloaded. That they're like, okay, well, we don't want to watch, mediocre football after we just had what a lot of people are saying. Not myself, but what a lot of people are saying was a bad Super Bowl because there was no offense.
Yeah, one of the worst Super
Bowls. There's 11 guys defense on each team, so teams decide to play defense sometimes. So you get a lot of that from people, but we'll see how it is in the coming weeks. When every home base has finally had a chance to have a home game. So.
Well, and Eric, I'm not going to put a lot of stock in the first year. The XFL, a lot of people don't realize this. The XFL was a tremendous hit year one. Tremendous hit. Their attendance went up.
It just didn't have the financial backing.
Right, and by year two, fans realized that it was a hokey pokey league and went, no, thank you. I think there's an appetite for a new league. I don't think there's an appetite for what the NFL just pulled. And the nice thing about the AAF is it doesn't matter if there's an appetite for it. The NFL can afford to dump this money into it to better its own product. So to me, doesn't have to be a money grab. If they can break even, they're going to walk out going, hell yeah, we're successful. I mean, they're only paying $250,000 per. Well, only. I wish I was making that kind of money. But every player, regardless of their positions, making $250K a year. That's it. And they sign a 3-year deal.
And I know you mentioned that the AAF is like a minor league system, but I mean, it might as well be college football. Because college football is your minor league because you have a draft.
Yeah.
These guys can sign undrafted free agent contracts.
Yeah.
Or they can just go back out on the open market. Let's just say Trey Richardson blows it up in 8 weeks, okay, before playoffs go. He's got 1,200 yards in 8 weeks. You don't think that he's going to sign an NFL contract?
Well, that's what I'd like to see the league do. Is I'd like to see the league change it up a little bit and go, okay, you know what? We're actually going to take away the semifinal game, and we're going to have the championship game the week before the draft, and you can be drafted. You can. Some
people want to go back to a redraft.
No, are you kidding me? Prove your worth.
I mean, Trey Richardson's not going to go into the draft. He's going to fall to the 7th round because, let's face it, nobody's going to draft him over a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old kid who's the next big thing.
If they can draft him, they got a guy they know is pro material. They got a guy that's been in the league. And they've got a running back that they could probably give, a 3-year contract to, sign for, half of what they would sign a college athlete coming out of college for. No, dude, that is a money-saving venture.
They're gonna sign free agent deals. They're not gonna.
I know, Eric. I know they are. I'm saying I'd like to see them move to that because there are drafts where you're like, really? This guy got drafted. He rushed for 175 yards this year.
Trey Richardson, first-round draft pick or whatever he was. Okay, that's what it says on the back of his football card. If he gets redrafted again, what are you going to put? Drafted twice by two different teams.
Yeah, why not? Make it you could. You know what? Do what the NFL used to do in the 80s and 90s. Have a compensation draft.
I mean, a comp draft could always work. That's different. You're not going to go into the collegiate draft.
No,
but another draft would work after the collegiate draft.
Yeah, there you go. So you keep the schedule the way it is, and you turn around and you do a compensation draft a week later or 2 weeks later, and you have ESPN cover it, and the NFL makes a butt ton of money, huh?
You do it right after the NFL draft. They're already there.
Yeah, except they got the championship game is when they play draft day. Like draft day, the Sunday when they finish up and wrap up the draft, that night they play the AAF championship game. And you don't have to do the compensation draft in Indianapolis. I don't know, pick someplace. All right, I want to get to the ugly. The ugly for me is that it further engulfs the incestual nature of the National Football League. I am glad to see Steve Spurrier and Rick Neuheisel get jobs. I'm happy for this guy from Birmingham that finally got a coaching job. But, man, watching these games, I was sitting there just shaking my head going, the incest in the NFL, it just won't die. You've got guys, let's face it, this guy from Birmingham, I'll tell you exactly what happened, and everyone can deny it all they want, but this is exactly what happened. They said to him, look, dude, you're never going to get a job in the NFL. But why don't you go to this farm team and take over as head coach there, show that you're worthy of maybe being a head coach, and then we'll give you, another shot. You do us a favor and we'll do you a favor. That is, Mike Martz is back. You've got, all these guys that have NFL coaching experience. And they didn't go out and get a brand new fresh coach outside of Rick Neuheisel and the guy from Birmingham. But the guy from Birmingham is an NFL vet. He's been in the NFL for years. I'm just sitting there going, the GMs, the ownership, all of it is former NFL. And it's just like, dude, are you serious? You're telling me that you can't find Bob Stoops, for example, which I'll get to that in a little bit. Like, you've got to be joking me with this. And then Scott Linehan's son is in this league. Are you on drugs? Scott Linehan's son looks like he hasn't seen the outside of a door since birth. He's whiter. He's so damn white. Casper the Ghost goes, damn, bro, you white. Like, he's that white. He has no muscle structure whatsoever. This is somebody who grew up in an NFL family, and his daddy made sure he got a job. That's all Scott Linehan's son is. And I watched the Salt Lake Stallions. And I'm sitting there going, he's the third string quarterback on this team? You're telling me that you couldn't have gone out and gotten the kid from Maine a few years ago? I forget his name. You couldn't have gone out and gotten a kid from Texas? You couldn't have gone out and gotten another? Are you serious? Hold that thought. So that bothers me because it looks like you have a lot of, it's a lot of scratching my back and that whole thing for me that makes the NFL difficult to swallow as it is, because you're not seeing young people get an opportunity. You're seeing people that the NFL is picking and choosing to be winners and losers, and that bugs me a little bit. What's the ugly for you, Eric, before we get into the games?
The ugly for me is how everybody wants to compare it to the NFL. Let it be its own. Don't compare everyone to everybody. Let them be themselves. Let them perform. And really, that's it. I mean, it's still too early to have a lot of ugly, in my opinion. Yeah. But I mean, it'll end up showing its. It'll end up rearing its ugly head once you let everything get going. I agree.
All right, so let's get into the product itself, because I got to be honest with you, Eric. I really liked what I saw. I thoroughly enjoyed every game. The only one I didn't get to watch from beginning to end was the Orlando game because it was regionally covered, so I was able to piecemeal it together. But I want to start with Saturday's game. So San Antonio defeats San Antonio 15-6 in a game that was 6-6 at halftime and stayed that way through 3. And then in the fourth quarter, the Commanders really showed kind of what they had. I was impressed with the defense of San Antonio. I thought it was outstanding defense from beginning to end. A lot of hits, a lot of high-impact plays, and two teams that I felt were pretty evenly matched by and large. My takeaway for that game was, the Fleet, they've got a lot of work to do. Typical Martz, loses the running game way too early if it's not successful, even when it is successful. But credit Mike Riley of San Antonio. They just kept with the running game. They kept mixing it up with the pass. They went downfield. McKay had a huge game. That kid is a stud.
Let me interrupt you. You know what? I'll tell you what my ugly is, okay? My ugly, and I apologize for being so late on this, but you actually just reminded me of what the ugly is, and you basically said it. And you're like, oh, Mike Martz and Mike Riley. Recycled dog crap.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the incestual nature.
Get some new blood. Get some highly talented. Get some Division II coach.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I'll tell you what. You get him and say, hey, let's see how you work with these guys for 8 weeks. You're going to have a spot on an NFL roster, coaching staff.
There you go. I agree with you. No.
Do you really want to see Mike Martz coaching again?
No.
Because you already know what he's going to do. He's not going to throw to his tight end. He's not going to use the running back like if he had a Marshall Faulk type, because you're not going to find a Marshall Faulk type in the AAF.
Yeah.
But what's he going to do? He's going to sit in shotgun. He's going to throw the ball.
Yeah, I know. Well, that goes back to my recycled dog crap. That's exactly what I mean when I say incestual. It's all the same. But I do think it's funny though that the two coaches. There's 3 coaches that have very little to no NFL coaching experience, and there are 5 coaches with a plethora of NFL experience. And all 3 of those coaches with little to no experience won big, and the 5 coaches that have NFL coaching experience and a plethora of it, they either lost or they barely won like Mike Riley did in the San Antonio game. Anyway, my take on that game, like I said, great defense, nip and tuck the whole way. you watched that game, you just didn't believe. It was a lot like the Super Bowl. You just didn't believe that San Diego was going to really win that game. They weren't putting it together enough. So you were like, okay, they may score, but they're not going to score enough. And McKay, man, that kid really flashed on the screen too for me. I really like what I saw out of him. San Antonio looked good. They won 15-6. E, your takeaway.
I was expecting more out of San Diego.
Yeah.
Listen, thing is, I watched the first drive and I watched the last drive for San Antonio. And although I was expecting more out of San Diego is what I mean, or what I believe I said.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you have a couple of good quick hits here, quick hits there, but offenses aren't in sync yet.
So, as far as Atlanta and Orlando, that really was, to me, one of the bigger surprises. I didn't know much about either of those teams. And, I mean, the old ball coach really laid the smackdown on whoever the Atlanta Legends coach is. I can't remember his name. It's certainly not noteworthy, that's for sure. But the Apollos won big, 40-6. Gilbert, the kid you were talking about, had a really big game. Down there in Florida, it kind of looked a little bit like the Florida Gators of old. It was kind of fun to see. They played a complete game. By far, in my opinion, the Apollos played the most complete game of anybody in the AAF this weekend, and it was an impressive performance. When you're able to put a 40-burger on somebody and hold them to under 10 points, you've done your job. So 40-6 was an impressive win. Your thoughts on on Gilbert, the quarterback?
Well, I mean, he was great in college at Texas Tech. Still has a lot of work to do to be, an NFL caliber head coach. So, I mean, maybe this is his opportunity to really shine.
I mean, you mean quarterback? Yeah. You said head coach. The quarterback for the Apollos is that Gilbert kid. He actually can catch. We know that. Something Tom Brady can't do, but I digress. Okay, so off to Sunday's games, and these ones I'll be quick with as well. Memphis at Birmingham. Man, the Iron... First of all, they have the coolest freaking uniforms outside of... I think they have the coolest uniforms in the league. But putting that aside, dude, their defense looked amazing. That was one of the best defensive performances I've seen in a really long time. Considering that you've only been together for 5 weeks and you're coming out there and you put a 0 on the scoreboard or allow 0 points on your scoreboard at home against a team coached by a former NFL great defensive linebacker, a former NFL coach in Mike Singletary, 26-0, and they just look solid all the way around. I mean, they were flying around, intercepting the ball, hitting people. It was really a lot of fun to watch. And I think Birmingham is going to end up with the #1 defense in this league when all is said and done at the end of the year. Very impressed with their defensive performance. Eric, did you catch any of that game?
That's a negative.
That's a negative? Okay. Moving on to the Arizona Hotshots. Salt Lake at Arizona. The Hotshots won 38-22. The game wasn't even really that close. Arizona at one point, it was a 3-point game, but then they really just pulled away. A lot of people say they're the most complete team, Eric, and they really looked it. I mean, offensively, defensively, even special teams. This team has everything you want in a football team. A lot of turnovers, a lot of big hits, a lot of big runs. Their running back depth, a lot of people are saying it reminds them of the Patriots. They've got 3 running backs that they can use interchangeably to do 3 completely different things. And it really came into fruition. But it's the quarterback that I was impressed with. He was the backup behind the starter that they had, and then Rick Neuheisel decided, no, I'm not going to go with the guy you want me to go with. I'm going to go with this kid. His name is John Wolford was his name. He, by far, was the most impressive player, in my opinion, all weekend long. His mobility in the pocket, his ability to throw on the run, his command of the offense, and just really not in a close game, he showed his muster. And in a blowout, he continued to show his talent. In my opinion, John Wolford stole the show. I was impressed with him. I thought he played a complete game at the quarterback position and really went deep. But the guy that everyone's talking about is Rose, the wide receiver for Arizona. He was absolutely making all of them look stupid, so it was kind of nice to see. Did you catch any of the Hot Shots game? Probably not, I'm guessing.
No, it wasn't on out here, actually.
It was on the network, so I don't know if you get the network, but yeah, there's going to be 2 games on the NFL Network every week, and then 1 game on CBS, and then 1 game on either TNT or CBS Sports. All in all, by and large, week 1 was entertaining, and you know, if you went in with no expectations, you probably came out with feeling pretty good about it. If you went in with high expectations, you probably came out a little disappointed. But overall, I felt like it was I thought it was a well-played game. All of them were really well played, and all had their own unique features to make them unique. Eric, any closing thoughts on this?
I'm going to get more into it as the season progresses. It wasn't the best weekend for me to watch, but I do plan on watching a little bit more. I know on the national stage, they only have like 1 Arizona game. I'm like, how are you going to have 3 out of 4 weeks where you have Atlanta on a national network, and then you're going to put Orlando on a national network, and then you're going to only put Arizona on once, once in those next 8 weeks on CBS. I'm like, people want to see the good teams, and yeah, I know it sucks watching the Patriots every Sunday night and Monday night, but you want to grow the brand. Show San Diego, show Arizona,
show them all
on a national level, because you know what, they're gonna. If those teams are good, especially the Hot Shots, put them on.
Yeah,
people want to see it. It's only an 8-week season. Put them on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. It'll be very, very interesting. All right, coming up next, Eric and I are going to talk about potential format changes moving forward. So, lastly, one of the things that we are going to be doing is we are Total Football Talk for a reason. And we are going to be changing the format here a little bit moving forward, where we are going to be covering XFL, AAF, and NFL. But we are going to start moving towards being your exclusive XFL channel. That doesn't mean I'm not covering the NFL. It doesn't mean Eric's not covering the AAF, and that we're just going to only focus on the XFL. It just means there are going to be updates as the league is updating. There are going to be videos that we will show periodically. There's 8 cities. We're going to talk about those. We're going to start getting into that. And the intro is going to change to the XFL intro because I think it's really cool. And considering that it is the only thing that's actually starting out as its own separate entity from the NFL, and it is not a sub-NFL league or a farm system, I want to give this thing as fair treatment as humanly possible. So you guys can look forward to that. Our intro is going to change for next year, but don't be alarmed when you see the XFL intro. That's just our intro moving forward. But as I said, we are Total Football Talk. So during the NFL season, we're going to do the same thing last year that we did this year, and this year that we did last year. And AAF, we're going to do just like we did today, and we're going to cover it. So I want to keep that in mind. Apollos and Iron are both 1-0, 1-2 in the division. Legends Express are 3rd and 4th. In the Western Division, Arizona and San Antonio are 1-0. Salt Lake and San Diego make up 3 and 4 in that conference. So the Western Division, if you will. So something to think about. Eric, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, just keep an open mind when you guys listen to us. I mean, we're not going to be experts as far as the AAF go yet, because we're getting into it as much as maybe you are too. Or the XFL. I mean, we could talk up the XFL, but I mean, if it's worse than it was before,
we'll tell you.
That's on them, and we'll cover it still.
Yep.
But my actual parting thoughts have to do with the NFL. Really quick, Anthony, Patrick Mahomes MVP. Agreed?
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
Okay. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Good call.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no question.
Darius Leonard for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Absolutely.
Matt Nagy, Head Coach, Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Okay. Kareem Hunt has signed with the Cleveland Browns today. Good move?
No. No, it is.
No, he says.
No. You have Nick Chubb.
No. You know what? That's the first thing I thought about when I heard the news.
You have Nick Chubb, and Chubb doesn't beat women up.
What's funny about that, not the whole beating up women part, because that's not funny. What's funny is that there's a rumor out there that John Dorsey leaked the tape that got Kareem Hunt in trouble so he could sign him.
Oh, that's dirty.
That is a current rumor. I'm not sure what to make of it if it becomes true. I want to hold my thoughts on that if it is true.
Well, I mean,
if I find out,
even if it is true, the video needed to be released.
well, correct, absolutely. It's not about the video now. It's how TMZ got it, and if it was leaked by Dorsey, so he could sign Kareem Hunt.
Here's another reason, Eric, why I love the XFL. A guy like Kareem Hunt, he's done. He's never allowed back in the league ever again under any circumstance.
Right.
You get a second chance.
They have that no tolerance policy.
Right. I love it. I love it. It's why I'm all in right now. But go ahead.
Well, that was the big news today. So, I'm just glad that the NFL and the writers and the voters got the awards right. Because I'm sorry, I would have had a little bit of a problem had Baker Mayfield won Rookie of the Year for offense.
Yeah.
Because he didn't start the whole year. But he did make a big. He did make a big impact. I think the Kareem Hunt signing is huge too, because we're still waiting on how long he's going to be suspended for. And I still think it's going to be more than 6 games.
It should be for an entire season. Actually, it should be
because he signed a 1 year, just under a $1 million deal, and he's going to become a restricted free agent next year.
See,
2020.
Personally, well, we'll get into that later, but it'll be interesting to see moving forward. All right, man. Good stuff. We will talk later, I guess, bro.
Sounds good, man. Looking forward to all this football talk.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So the AAF has kicked off, but we are going to do an XFL show sometime this week. I will organize that with you, Eric. It will probably be about 6 minutes long. Not a lot to go over. Just a couple of signings that I think are pretty interesting that I'm excited to talk about. I'm Anthony.
I'm Eric.
Go Rams!
Go Bears!
Horns up!
They're down.
And I'll see you next time.